I'm Sadie, and I'm E.
I'm Elizabeth, and I'm C.
Megan, and I'm B.
Austin, I'm D.
Callie, I'm A.
What was the first part?
It was
influences.
Oh yeah, the different.
Oh,
influences.
yes, that's right. See, this is where I don't have my thing. One thing that I remember I wrote about was the attitudes of your colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, a lot of times people don't even realize that they even have an attitude towards different groups of kids. But my school, the boundary changed a while back. So I had been there for a couple of years, and then the boundary changed. And when it changed, we got all of the kids that are on Electric Avenue, which is like where Lafine's Donuts is. And and so there's some apartments there, and the housing is a little lower income. There's a trailer park kind of back in there.
There's like a huge apartment complex over there.
Yeah, Fraser Street apartment complex is massive.
Well, there's one on Electric.
Yes.
Is that?
Yeah, there's two of them.
Ones?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a big giant.
Yeah. And so when those kids came, the teachers who had been there for a really long time would say things a lot like, man, our population has changed, and not like ever blatantly saying anything, outright, but it was implied, and it was frustrating because it's like you have had this golden job for years where you didn't even really have to teach. I mean, you do, but the kids come in so supported and prepared.
Yeah.
And then these kids are not as much, and so they had to change what they had done for 20 years, and so that was hard for a lot of them. People don't really say that in these years now, but that was a big talk for a couple of years about how our population is different.
And I feel like even just like volunteering in the classroom, like I worked with at my old elementary for like 4 years, all throughout high school, and like they got like a new wave of students, and like even as a volunteer, and like they're like, okay, you need to work with these students because like they need the help, like that's what's changed.
Mm-hmm.
It's like like sad to like they're not like obviously outright saying it, but it's like it implies it, and like the students can sometimes see it in like the attitude they bring to the classroom, which is really
when people don't like trust them as much, so like if they say they're sick or they lost their homework or something like that, it's kind of like really
like
that
second guess you.
Whereas other kids would just be like, oh yeah, you're sick, I'll send you to the office.
Which, as a teacher, I feel like you should expect more diversity in your classroom and not like be so surprised that now you're getting a new wave of students or something like that.
Yeah.
Just be like, all right, good, bring it
Yeah.
on,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was happy because it was like this is adding a little bit more flavor to my classroom.
Yeah.
We're not all the same
Yeah.
type of person,
Yeah.
So it was nice when that changed.
Yes.
And it kind of, it was good for those kids who have grown up in that environment that have never been exposed to the people who are different than them and can't afford, they don't ask for iPads for their 8th birthday, so, yeah.
And it also going back. It also allowed like the teacher to incorporate more cultural aspects into their teaching, like bringing in books or articles about other cultures. So it like gives you something else to teach about, which is
And it's not just kind of out of the blue. It's like directly related to kids that are in the classroom. Yeah.
One thing that I kind of talked about was like they talked about like the new like laws of like like the testing and stuff, and like you like said like it hadn't really like affected you that much because like the district you're in like doesn't put the focus on that. But I'm just like wondering like you never know where you'll end up being placed, but like if you end up in one of those schools, like the stress that would put on us as teachers, because like I mean like I want to incorporate like like the arts and like different things and like more like interactive stuff, but like I feel like that'd be really difficult when like a lot of teachers lean towards that more one-size-fits-all type idea.
Yeah, there's a lot of, Bellingham has a history of just kind of teachers, for a long time teachers just did whatever they wanted. We didn't even have curriculum when I first started teaching. So, and as a new teacher, right, as a new teacher, I didn't know what I was doing.
I feel like I'd go into a classroom and just be like,
Yeah, I mean,
Same.
basically, like,
They're learning.
writing especially,
Oh
I
my
didn't
gosh.
teach writing for my first couple of years because how do you, writing is
Yeah.
still the hardest subject for me to teach.
Oh my god.
We had book sets, like you go get
Yeah.
chapter books, we had a room of that, we had no reading curriculum, we had
Wow.
science curriculum, but that was it.
Crazy.
And math, we had math, we had old Turk. But yeah, it was hard, and so then when we got curriculum, that was even hard for people in this district. Like, what? I'm being forced to teach this curriculum, and now people have kind of realized, like, no, this is a guide.
Yeah,
You
it's
can use
easier.
this to help
Yeah.
you, but
Yeah.
then you can adapt it to whatever you need
Yeah.
to do. Yeah, and we, have the kind of the permission to do that, like you were just saying. Whereas other districts, I think, they're so worried about test scores, they get this prescribed curriculum, and then they think if we follow this exactly the way it says to do it, then our test scores will get better, and there's no perfect curriculum.
Yeah.
So
Everyone's at a different spot when they enter, so how can
Yeah.
you just like, okay,
Yeah, this is
let's
what
use
you
this
need.
curriculum
Yeah.
because like
Mhm.
students might not be there.
But even at the state level, so district by district, it affects you differently, and then state by state, and at the Washington state level, they're still talking about trying to tie our pay to test scores. And they want to get rid of the salary schedule where you get a raise based on your credits and how many years you've worked, and just have it be based on test scores. And so last year, that was why we had those one-day walkouts. That was one of the reasons why we went on strike. Was because they were trying to do that. So hopefully it never
Crazy.
happens.
Yeah,
but-
I think that's stupid.
Yeah.
But I think that's dumb because it's like you could be a really awesome teacher in a really difficult school,
it also
and then you're
depends
gonna
on-
get paid less than
Well,
the crappy
yeah.
teacher in a good school.
Yeah, if you work at Alderwood and all your kids are ELL, they're not going to pass those tests
Yeah.
ever, no matter how much you help
Yeah.
them.
Or as like a math teacher, Callie, like I know my dad's a high school math teacher, like if you get stuck with like an applied class.
Yeah, you get
versus,
stuck
like,
with
a pre
freaking like senior math.
Yeah, or compared
Yeah.
to like a pre-calc class, like those kids wanna go on and like his
Yeah.
applied algebra 1 kids have like failed like 3 times
Yeah.
already and they like don't wanna
Exactly.
be there.
And it's also like test taking ability. Like some students aren't the best at test taking, so that wouldn't
Yeah.
be fair. But they could still be like really good students, and you have a good teacher.
In my sister's district, she works in Lake Stevens, and they have huge elementary schools, so like 5 classes per grade level. And they have so many kids per grade level, they have highly capable classrooms, so they test in, and then they're
Is this like the 3, 4, 5 thing?
no, they're all in one grade, so like
Or 4, 5, 6.
fourth grade they'll have like 2 high cap classes, highly capable classes, and then they kind of group the other kids too. So you'll end up with like high, medium, low classes, and then think if that was tied to your
Yeah.
pay, you know.
I
So
just don't understand where anyone thinks that this would be a like successful way to like, not to mention to get like teachers to be motivated in the
Yeah.
classrooms, and then like, can you imagine like, even in high school, if you found out, if I don't do well on this test, like that person right in front of me is going to be affected.
Yeah, like the pressure on the students and
Yeah.
the teachers.
well, when we went on strike last year, I talked to my class about it because it was like we're not gonna have school on Friday, and I want you to know why.
Yeah.
And I kind of briefly explained it, and they were like, even at 4th grade, they were like, my test would determine how you get paid. I was like,
Yeah.
They like understand.
Yeah.
And like at a high school level or like even a junior high level, like if the like students like, oh I don't like my teacher, I'm gonna do bad on the test. Like you know,
And like I agree that teachers should be held accountable, but like that I don't think that's the way to do
Not
it.
in that way. Yeah.
Like you can't base it off of student performance. Like if there's like, I don't know how you hold teachers accountable because there are a lot of crappy teachers who are just like their students are failing because they're not teaching them well.
Yeah.
Like that's a reality.
Yeah.
But it's not all teachers whose students are failing. So it's like, I mean, there's no easy answer to say like this is a good way to keep teachers accountable. But like,
Yeah.
I feel like that's what it should work towards instead of like
Well, and not to
forcing
mention
the students to reflect on the teachers.
all of us that are in college currently paying a ton of money. Like, what's our motivation to be here?
Yeah.
Instead of just going into the school and being like, all right, well, I'm just gonna fake it till we make it, and then eventually I'll get paid well
Yeah.
Yeah.
once I figure out what I'm doing. Like, what's the point in getting an ELL endorsement then?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I was just reading this blog this teacher had posted yesterday about her blog post was all about why she left teaching after 10 years, and it was all about the politics of it. You try and try to do your best, and it's like doesn't matter because of the political stuff that's always driving education. And and then that whole No Child Left Behind thing where you fail, so we're going to take away your money. That's that's how the federal government uses that act. So you have a failing school. If you fail 2 years in a row, then you don't get as much funding.
Yeah.
And then in big cities, they just end up closing the school. And they have to pay to bus them all over. It just doesn't make any sense. It's really frustrating.
And like some schools that like don't need the like extra funding
Yeah.
end up with it.
Mm-hmm.
Like those schools that aren't performing as well should like they need the
They
extra
need- yeah.
funding to like help like with the
Support,
resources
yeah.
and like make sure that they have like qualified teachers to help those students.
If you give like the money to the students who do poorly on the tests, then it's incentive. Like then you're taking
Yeah.
the motivation from like the students who are doing well. Like you're
Yeah.
saying, oh, you did well, but like we're not going to reward you anyway. Like
Yeah.
we're going to basically punish you by not funding you.
Yeah.
So like because I've thought of that too. It's like, well, I feel like the students who are struggling need the money, but you can't like take the money away from the students who are doing good because then they're being punished for working hard and getting good grades. I don't know. It's like
I know.
Which is why money should just not be in it, Like just
Yeah.
eliminate the money from
Yeah.
the children. Well, like obviously you can't like take away other resources, but it, like
like
money.
the way they perform
Yeah.
Yeah.
determine where the
Like,
money goes.
Yeah.
Everyone's different, and test scores should definitely not be the thing that
Not
it
at
should just.
all.
Why can't everyone just get the same resources, and then if it takes like longer to figure out how to take this test and pass it, that's so be it. That's just the way it's gonna be.
Yeah, monitoring progress is completely different than you have to be at this standard
Yeah,
at this
at
point
this
in
time.
time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Different students progress in different times.
And we group students in this country based on their age instead of their ability. And
Yeah.
so everybody develops differently.
Differently,
And when they're great based on their age, we're saying, oh, if you're 7, you should be able to do this no matter who you are.
Yeah.
Which doesn't help people learn.
No. And then discourages them, and then they're pressured to be like, oh well, if I'm not learning how this person is, then that means that I'm
Something's
dumb
wrong.
or something's wrong.
I mean,
yeah.
even take away like ELL students, like just look at boys and girls.
Yeah.
Like boys and girls at 7-year-old are not developmentally on the same stage.
No.
Like when I was in kindergarten, so like taking even further back, like in kindergarten, I was 4, I could read. There was kids in my class who were 6, cannot read.
Yeah.
Like it's just developmental stages of like children, not like individual
Mhm.
kids.
Yeah.
They develop
I'm
differently,
sure they
and
learn
not
to read
like,
eventually.
not some-
not even ELL students, but just like
in general,
kids
yeah.
in general
Well, that-
learn differently and at different paces. So like if you're taking somebody who's an ELL student and putting them into that situation, like they're gonna be even backed up just a little bit further.
Slower. Yeah.
Well, that's like I skipped a year of preschool because I was in the preschool and I could do everything that anyone in the preschool was required to do, and most of the kindergarten. And they my mom talked to anyone she could and was like my daughter doesn't need another year of preschool, yet you're saying that she's required to. Like, what's the point? And they're like, well, she just has to. Like,
Yeah.
how is she gonna be ready? Like, this is the
How's
age
she-
group.
how's
She
gonna
can
be
do
ready?
everything in the age group, but that doesn't mean she can do everything in the next age group. She's like, but she's gonna sit and essentially I'm gonna pay for babysitting for the next
Yeah.
year. Like, what's the point? So I had to go take a test to prove
Yeah,
that I can
that
do all
too.
this. Yeah. And they were like, well, just so you know, she's gonna be held to the standards of a better age group, an older age group. And my mom's like, so what? Like, it's gonna
Yeah.
push her. Why are you acting like
Isn't
it's
that the
the
point?
worst part in the whole entire world? Like,
Yeah.
so what? She can't drive as soon as everyone else. She'll live. Like, she's not gonna kill her life or anything like that. Like, she's gonna be
That's how
fine.
I was too. I was like, and there was like a pilot program in our district for like they picked randomly or like you could like apply for it. So many kids were like allowed to like do this pilot program where you could like start kindergarten early. So it was like testing that. I don't ever know what happened, but it was like a thing, and I don't know. So you could like start early if you were more developed, which is like
It should be a
more
good thing,
Yeah.
but they acted
Yeah.
like it was like the world was coming down. It's like, it's just a kid that knows what she's doing.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, and then you have those kids in your classroom that are highly capable that you're trying to help them learn more, without just teaching them things they already know, like you're saying. And then if you have a mix, and then you have all these ELL kids too that are in your room, your range of learners is massive, and you might have 30 kids and one of you, and it's like nearly impossible to teach them all at the level that they should be taught
Well, and then imagine if your pay was getting dependent on everyone's score. you're really like, even if you're trying not to, you're not going to focus on the kids that are highly
Oh,
capable.
yeah.
You're going to focus on the ones that aren't getting it. I mean,
Totally.
even
Yep.
if you're, you know,
You already
resisting
kind of
it.
do that
Yeah.
because it's hard to like know how to teach those kids beyond where they're already at when
exactly.
without like teaching them everything that they're already going to do the following year, you know. Well, and then I was thinking too, or we were just talking about how like what's your motivation if your test scores are going to be affected by all these kids, and you think about like migrant students, they're moving around constantly, so you could get a kid in your classroom, and 2 weeks later they have to take the test. And you haven't even talked, like they haven't even been your student, and their test score still reflects your teaching. Because they don't account for any of that stuff in the test score. It's not like they go back in their history and look at that. Yeah. So there's so many factors that go
That was like
into
one of the
it.
case studies from like one of the first weeks of one of the first posts was like the student was like came here and then like the first year of school didn't have to do the tests and then like the next year had to though, but like by that time they still like weren't fluent, so they I mean it was still like really really stressful, so it's like I mean would it be better to like let them skip a year or like to let them do it and then like the next year retake it, because by the time you get to the second year it's like based on last year's material, which when you're a year farther past that you forget. And then the English, I don't know, it's just, I was reading about that and it was just like really confusing. It was like, so they're skipping the, like this test and then next year they have to like do that. Like, I don't know,
Go back and do it.
Which, if they didn't learn it, you know, I'm sure if they're trying to manage a new language, like they're not going to completely understand everything that's happening.
Yeah.
No, especially the content, because they might not have they might be able to be fluent at English, but then the content, especially as they get older, if they don't have the background knowledge,
Yeah.
it becomes so hard to access
Well,
it.
even it's like, so like you, when I was in school, it's 4th grade WASL, and then 5th grade, like you didn't have a standardized test, or it was like something else.
Science.
Yeah, so it's like if I didn't take the test in 4th grade and had to take it in 5th grade. So in 4th grade, they teach you all of the testing strategies and all the things to do to get a 4 on your WASL.
Yep.
So then if you go through 5th grade and then you take it at the end of 5th grade, you haven't been taught all those strategies on how to pass this test. And if you don't even speak English very well, like you're definitely going to fail, even a year later in school.
That's like when I was in junior high, I don't know, they implemented some new math tests, and I was a year ahead in math, and so I was in geometry, but they were gonna say that I had to take the algebra test, but I hadn't I hadn't been in algebra and I've been focusing on geometry, and so like all of us that were advanced were like, okay, like our teacher's not just gonna stop teaching us the geometry work to prepare us for the algebra test that we're gonna have to take in 2 weeks. Like, and then imagine like the language and like you probably didn't learn that content, you know.
Now they have to take, now every grade is the same thing. So starting in 3rd grade, they take English language arts and math, and each of them. So when they first designed the test, because the WASL turned into the MSP.
I would say it was a HESP for a while.
Yeah, that was a different one. There's all
I have no idea what it. I was like, I was the WASL, and I didn't know anything else. Like it never changed when I was in school. It was always the WASL all the way through.
Yeah.
Like, I have no
But then it
idea.
would take them all day. So like they'd have their writing MSP, and it would take all day, literally. Like some kids would stay after school because they couldn't finish the writing one. So they didn't want that to happen. So then they thought, well, we'll just break the test up into little chunks. They still have to sit there for like 2-3 hours at a time, and it takes a week. So a week for English language arts and a week for math.
Wow.
It's
Getting
insane.
3rd graders to sit down and
Yeah, for that
focus
long.
for that long.
Yeah, and they have to type everything
Yeah,
now.
I
So
like
they're not,
really
it's all on the
did.
computer, the
I-
whole test
oh,
is on
wow.
the computer.
My class was the pilot class for that in junior high, and it
What
was
year did you graduate high school? Just curious.
2014.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was like crazy because we didn't have any training with the computers,
Yeah, there's all these
So-
tools on there.
and so I didn't know how to go back and check my work. So I was like sitting there like making sure I got like, you know, everything like how I wanted it before I went to the next question. So I couldn't imagine being someone that doesn't have like knowledge about technology because
Yeah, or like typing.
they didn't prepare us. They're like, okay, it's gonna be on the computer. Like our prep work was all written on paper pencil, and so I was like so nervous like me is like going home and working on the computer. And,
Well, like as a math person, I just feel like you can't grade students based on like a computer math test.
No,
You
so
can't
they
do
have
that,
like a
like,
scrap paper and they show all their thinking, and then all they're putting in there is an answer.
I think that's
you
stupid.
don't see.
You don't see all the
That-
thought
yeah,
process that went into it.
For all you know, why didn't they just put it into a calculator?
Yeah.
That's essentially
Like
what
I
it
feel like
is.
if that was me
Yeah.
as a student having to take a math test online on the computer for a WASL, I would either opt out or I would just like put a bunch of random answers. Move on.
Especially if they're like, you're gonna have to sit here for the next 3.5 hours. It's like,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, right.
And that thing you mentioned about the calculator, like that's what teachers end up resorting to because they're so scared about their pay. There's this story, I don't know the
I'm
exact.
sorry, what was the calculator thing?
Oh, like how do you know they're not just using a
Oh, yeah.
calculator to find the answers? And as a teacher, if you were worried about your pay, then you might say like, okay, everyone, we're going to use a calculator for this test, and no one's going to ever find out, or you think they're not.
Yeah.
So they can get better. You know, that's what. There's a group of teachers in, I think they were in Chicago, maybe, and they were all African American teachers. But it was this type of situation, and they cheated. They went and like changed their test scores, and they're getting jail time for it.
Well,
So
my-
they broke the law, of course,
Well,
but
think that,
they were like pushed to. That was like their only option
Yeah.
at that point.
yeah.
Well, yeah, because they feel they're gonna lose their job anyway.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I understand why. I guess I get it. Like, it's a little bit ridiculous, but at the same time, it's like, if you're boosting your test scores to get more money, you're essentially stealing money.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
Like,
you're not,
yeah.
you don't want to do that,
Yeah,
but they
But, like,
feel threatened, and so then
Yeah.
that's what they do crazy things.
Well, and I bet you some of it is guilt that they weren't actually able to teach their students.
Mhm.
And so they're like, you know what, not only is it affecting me, but now my students.
how do you even change test scores?
That was
Yeah.
back when it was paper pencil, and they literally like went to someone's house and like erased and
What?
changed test scores.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I
So
was
they,
like,
it was
I
bad what they
don't, I was
did,
like, I don't
but
know how you would do this.
Like,
I mean,
you
like-
can't go back and check your work. How are you gonna go and change all the answers?
yeah, no, that was before the computer. But to like lock
Okay.
them up, like
Yeah.
oh, you're in jail now for however many years. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a little extreme.
Like, it's fine.
All the-
but I don't
All the
know.
other people
Yeah.
in jail, they're like, yeah, we changed our students' test scores.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then I think now the ELL test, the WELPA, is also all on the computer. So those ELL kids have to take their.
Like, how many
Their
of us have
test
even
that's-
seen
Yeah.
used computers before?
Yeah.
Like, if they're new, if
Yeah.
they're students,
Brand new to the country
probably
or something.
never.
Use
And I don't want to say like you've never seen a computer, but like most
It
of my
might
students came here to have like better opportunities, and if they're coming from places where they don't have opportunities, they most likely don't have computers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
it's not
like
like they have one
typing,
at
like
home.
Yeah,
I had a
typing.
typing like program when I was in grade school, and it was like type to learn or something like that.
That's what we use.
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like
we
they
have
probably
those little
never
like little portable like keyboards with like the tiny little screen on them.
really.
Oh gosh, I don't remember what those are
Yeah,
called,
well,
but-
and that's what we've been talking about in our district, because a lot of primary teachers don't do very many
Yeah.
things in the computer lab, and it's like, but by third grade, they have to
They
like
have
type a whole story
Yeah.
on this test.
in third grade.
Mhm.
Well,
Wow.
that's like I have a friend, and she went to like it was a weird school, which turns out it's not working. It was they like tried to make it where, like they broke it up, so it wasn't like one building. They broke it up into like this is management, this is that, this is whatever other like culinary or whatever. But it was a high school, and so she's like, yeah, the system's really not working. Not only for safety, everyone being in different buildings, but you couldn't change. Like if you decided management when you went into high school, you couldn't change. That's what you were stuck with, and that's where all your
It's like
teachers
picking a
were.
major.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
exactly. And so she's like, it was terrible. She's like, thankfully I knew what I was doing, but there was a lot of people, you couldn't walk between buildings, you couldn't take classes in other buildings, like that's where you were. And so she's like, well, I
It's
was
just like insane tracking.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
And then I was like, all right, well, they have a lot of money at the school. And she's like, yeah, no, everyone's getting iPads. And I was like, oh, and she's like, so pretty much like every student, like nothing is going to be written anymore. Like they're going to learn on the iPads, they're going to do everything on the iPads. And I'm like, I understand for college, like you need to have technology. I mean,
Yeah.
writing everything on the computer, but there has to be a balance.
Oh yeah.
Because even I had
Uh-huh.
classes today where they're like, no, I'm sorry, you can't have your computer. I don't want you looking
Yeah.
on Facebook during class.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Like, can you imagine those students who for the last 4 years have done everything online? They'd be like,
wow, that's
I didn't bring a pencil.
Like,
I don't
oh,
know what
what's a
a pencil is.
pencil?
Exactly. Oh, I
Yeah,
don't
there's
know.
a lot of districts that Ferndale, my librarian, her kids go to Ferndale, and they have a 1-to-1. Every kid has a.
Bellingham should go over
Mhm. They are trying to go one to
Yeah.
one, but not. I
I
don't know
think
about
it's-
high school, but
like, I think
elementary
it's-
they wouldn't take it home.
Yeah, I think it's a good program, but I also think it has a lot of downfalls.
Yeah, it depends on what you use it for.
Yeah,
I would
exactly.
love to have a class set of iPads because
Yeah.
you could do so much cool stuff.
Yeah.
But if that's
Well,
all
it's
you
really
ever
good for
do,
differentiation, like especially for
Yeah.
ELL students, it's like, so you could be working on math, we could all be doing math, like my ELL students could be doing math and like, it's written in Spanish and then the problem is it written in English so you can like see the translation and like, and then a math problem and it could be
yeah.
like, and then high-end students could be doing different problems and then students who don't understand this math could be doing like, it's really good for differentiation, but I feel like it's hard
Yeah, there needs to be a
when it's not
balance.
handwritten.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, and then if it's like, what if they, I mean, obviously this is the opposite of how it's gonna be in the future, but like, what if they did everything on the iPad and then they had to go take the test in written?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And, you know, they'd be completely thrown off and not have any idea how to track it or whatever.
Well, I'm sure. Do you still have blue books in some classes?
Yeah.
Where you have to like write in them at
Yeah.
the end. Yeah. So they have to know. You know, sometimes they're gonna have to
Yeah,
write
exactly.
with their actual hand.
Yes.
Like I was at Squalicum High School last year and they don't have a one-to-one program, obviously, but their math curriculum is based off of a one-to-one program.
Oh.
So like their math curriculum that they have at Squalicum High School for 10th grade math is a one-to-one program.
Wow.
But they don't have iPads to give the kids to do the math.
So
So
what do
like
they
the
do?
teachers print out the worksheets. They just
Oh.
print out the worksheets that you're supposed to do on an iPad.
Wow.
It's like it's a bunch of BS
Yeah.
because
So what's even the point of printing it out?
Yeah.
well, I mean it's the curriculum, so like they're doing the work.
They need
like,
to practice. That's
Yeah.
supposed to.
but
be
I mean, what
on
else do you
iPad.
do? You're not going to sit here and come up with they don't have a math book,
Oh, wow.
so you don't like pick,
Yeah.
like do problems 1 through 15, all the odd problems. Like
Yeah,
it's
a lot
like
of textbooks
worksheets.
are going to online,
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
and
it's
they're
like
all.
a textbook, but it's on. the
So it was really
computer.
weird that it was a one-to-one program without
Yeah.
being a one-to-one school.
Yeah. So maybe that's why Bellingham's trying to go one to one
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Because like it was a
Started
good
under
curriculum and like the worksheets explained things really well and like they guided you through the lesson really well. So the teacher didn't have to do a lot of in-front teaching.
Mhm.
You'd say, okay, this is what we're doing today and would explain a few key terms and give them definitions. And then I hand the worksheets out and everybody could work at their own pace and like he would walk around. And it would just lead you through the lesson. It would like have a definition and then it would like ask you a question and then it would say like look at this graph and you would have to like find something. So
Do
it
they
would
do it
walk you through it
individually?
really, really well.
Or like
Like
in
in
group, do they
groups,
work
yeah. You can like work at your own pace.
Yeah.
It's like they were good lessons, but it's like it would be a lot more beneficial if they could do this the way it was intended to be
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
Like why would you have a curriculum?
Well, by the time we get one to
Yeah.
one, there'll be some new curriculum.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
better.
exactly. So it's just weird.
Yeah. Oh, chapter 3. I had to talk about PSYOP, which you'll learn a lot about in your next class. You have a whole book about PSYOP. And it was, I didn't know that much about it before I took the class over the summer. And it's, I don't know, I feel like that book and that content should be a part of everybody's teaching undergrad preparation because it's all about that part in that chapter that was talking about the I do, we do, you do, the scaffolding that you provide students, and the PSYOP model is that, but just with a little bit more, like, you know, bringing in outside materials or making sure you have videos or pictures to kind of supplement to make it more authentic for students. And when I read that book, I was thinking, this is just good teaching. Like, this is what
Yeah.
everybody should be doing, and it's beneficial no matter who your students are because it, you know, it makes the vocabulary more real. It allows them to access it. And then if you partner some of the PSYOP strategies with GLAD, which is another,
So what does PSYOP stand for?
it's really shelter and instruction is like the S and the I are really all you ever hear, sheltered instruction, and then the O and P are like observation protocol or something.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Like watching the video that she had on there was like really interesting to see like how the like teacher like kind of like guided the students through the work. Like with the Amelia Bedelia book that she was like reading, like having the students like act out like what Amelia was like like most of her students were ELL, and so like understanding the difference between like words that sound the same, but like meanings and
Yeah.
stuff.
And she had those little props too to help them know like what a
Yeah.
duster was.
And then she would like say it in Spanish so that the kids could like make the connection. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I liked that video. At first I was like, man, this is kind of old school. They're all just like sitting there and she's talking to them, but as it went on, then they started doing more things on their own. The part I liked the best was when they were coming up with questions and they were all like looking through the books really intently.
And they're like in their whiteboards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I had never thought about like the song, I don't remember what it's called, but like the directions, like move to the right and like doing the different prompts. Like I had never thought about that. Like I want to be like an early, like a first grade teacher, like like students learning their directions like left and right. That'd be like really cool, like to interact with
Like
them.
incorporating music and stuff. Yeah.
Chants.
Chants, yeah.
Yeah, her little rap. The beginning ones.
Yeah, the a lot of the GLAD strategies, like that one's guided language acquisition design, I think is the D. And it has a lot of chants, TPR, which is like total physical response. So you have a vocabulary word and you come up with some short little movement for it, and then you just repeat it and repeat it and repeat it so they can tie in the movement to the word. And when I've done this before just with my normal class, and you'll see them like I do it with angles a lot so that they can figure out the types of angles. And you'll see them in assessments, like, they'll get that question and they'll be over there like, doing it to themselves because it helps them remember it. Yeah.
In
So
one of my science classes, it was like 201 with the cars. Like I didn't do my hand.
That's so fun.
yeah, so those two strategies are really helpful for any students.
Good ones.
I couldn't look at the standards because they were not loading. They do know that the Common Core standards are super language heavy now. And there's a whole other.
There's an app you can get on your phone.
Really?
It's really easy to use.
Yeah.
To get the Common Core app. It's
Yeah.
awesome.
That is awesome.
What is it like?
And if you just type in, I want to say it's just Common Core, and then it just looks like this little sciencey thing.
Oh yeah.
There's
It's just
another
like
one that has
Common Core.
that same like little logo that's the next generation science standards. You can also get an app for those.
Yeah, so if you just like go into it, and then it says like standards, resources. So
Oh,
you like go
wow.
into standards, and then you can pick like
What grade?
which one.
Yeah.
So like if I did like math traditional, and then you can pick each grade.
Oh wow.
And then like for high school, it has like algebra, geometry, algebra 2.
That's way simpler than the website, because the website was kind of
Yeah.
Yeah, the website.
One of my other teachers told me about this app, and it was like,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Because everything refers to Common Core standards,
Yeah.
and it's like, this is a really easy way to like look them up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
But there's, I don't remember if she said it like in the post, but when you go in there to look, there's the English language arts standards for every grade, which is all about reading and writing, and then there's a whole nother language section that's like separate from English language arts.
Well, and like the reading ones are separate from the writing ones.
Yeah. And the language section is all these things. We looked at it in my linguistics class, and there are things on there that I learned in that linguistics class as a graduate student, like the vocabulary of the parts of speech, and they have it listed as like this is what students should know at each grade level. And we were talking about how like as a teacher you look at that and you wouldn't even know what that stuff was. You have to like go look up some of the words,
Yeah.
like a I can't even think of one.
I
Like
don't
a
know.
relative clause. What the
Like
hell
what
is
is
that?
yeah.
And then how do you go about teaching it authentically?
Yeah.
When you're like,
Yeah. Instead of saying, today I'm going to teach you about relative clauses. That's not really like what they need to know. They just, I don't know. That language standards are kind of crazy.
And then mine kind of talks about the WELPA test, like you're talking about for the ELL students, like if they get like the extra support amount and like how that can affect like, their performance with Common Core. It's like, it's just like crazy to think, like that support like is obviously like really good for them, but then like they're like focusing on learning the language, but then like developing that in with the content like can be difficult.
Yeah, and like the test that they took, we just took it for the first time last year. in the English language arts, like you would have a topic, like insects, and then you have to read 3 articles or stories or whatever about insects, and then answer all of your questions. So if you don't have if you can't access that content, then how do you even go about answering those questions? Yeah. Well, and I know a lot of people, the Common Core is like super bashed right now. Like Arizona just decided they're rejecting the Common Core. People
Everybody like
say
that
the
is
Common Core
but
is so
it's like
horrible.
if you're teaching well, like these are the
Then
things
yeah.
you should be doing.
Mhm.
Like it's like frustrating that there's a lot of emphasis on them and they're like being shoved down teachers' throats.
Mhm.
Like I think they're used wrong, but those are the things
They're
you should be doing.
helping, yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if you're teaching your students, they should be able to engage in conversations and go deeper into their writing and like I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I was
Well,
reading through some of like the language arts ones and it's like yes, you should be able to analyze what you're reading.
Yeah.
You should be able to write a letter by the
Yeah.
end of like
Yeah.
elementary school.
Yeah.
Like I don't know.
Well, and that analyze, apply,
Yeah.
those were all like the ones that were new. Like we didn't really have anything like that before. But if you read research about how people learn, then when you can apply it and analyze it, then that's when you really know it well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not just regurgitating information. You can actually apply what you learned. Well, and the whole idea was that the whole country would be working on the same things instead of states just kind of doing their own thing.
Common Core is also super like easy to manipulate.
Yeah.
To do what you want with it.
Yeah.
But it's like it would also almost be more helpful if it was more specific.
Yeah.
Because they're very wordy and super easy to interpret how you want to interpret them.
Super broad.
Because for one of my classes, we have to like create lesson plans right now and teach our students, and you don't have to, but we've been looking at the Common Core, and it's like I can
can
literally
interpret it
take
in
all
a
of the
different
writing
way,
ones and put them in one lesson if I like just fudge my lesson like this much. So it's like Common Core is good, but
There's different
it needs to
interpretations.
there's so many different interpretations. It's like how do you
Well, yeah, and then
But
so
it's
what
not gonna be
ends up
consistent
happening is
everywhere.
you teach the test is what people end
Yeah.
up doing because that's the interpretation that they focus on is where whatever they need to be able to do to pass the test at the end of the year. Yeah. Well, the math standards in Washington in 2008 they rewrote them and they were awesome and they were super specific and it was really easy to know like this is what I should teach my students and then we got used to that and then they brought out Common Core and it's so broad like you're saying.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you even know where to start, especially if you don't have a curriculum. It's good.
Well, and they're just like thrown in there where it's like number 1 might be like way more complicated than standard number like 6. Like so it's like they're not in order of like you should do this. In like 6th grade your Common Core standards should go like steps 1 through 6. It's like here's the things that you know.
Yeah. One thing we've done as teachers is taken a standard across the grade levels and see what that looks like. And that when you just look at one standard, it does then it builds. And so that's kind of nice to look at and see how like this is what they should have done last year. So now this is where I'm taking that and build on it.
It's like hard when the standards are like this and then
And then-
this thing
yeah.
and then this thing. It's not like this and this like together. Like there's like different standards that are completely different within math, within writing, within language arts. Like you can connect them, like they don't connect them.
Yeah.
Like Common Core isn't connected
No.
very well.
And
They're just a whole bunch of wordy phrases like teach your kids.
teaching like through content is so hard because you have to do all that planning yourself. Like you have to integrate it all into the content. So if you had like Native Americans as your topic, you could teach all of those subjects within that
I'm
topic.
not sure what you said there.
Oh gosh.
Siri doesn't
Siri
even know.
doesn't know what I'm talking about. But
Oh,
you
yeah.
have to do it yourself as the teacher.
Oh.
It's scary. Yeah.
But going back to like being able to teach something is almost the best way to know it. My one was language as an action, and so it talked about like projects and presentations and like getting up there and talking about it instead of just even just like it says working with a partner, but like working your way slowly, which is what the Common Core showed, like working your way so that you can stand up there and talk about it and explain it and everything. And so I thought it was really helpful and really I know that's the best way is like even if I don't know something by the end of my own presentation I'm like, yeah guys,
Yeah. And like even when you are like practicing to present something, you like you don't want to just get up there and not have looked at it or know what you're talking about, so you have to like practice it.
Yeah, when you're applying it, you have to teach it to somebody else.
So it kind of goes back to like last week where we were talking about like helping those students like higher and lower and stuff. Did you want to like maybe write a question about the Common Core?
Sure.
I don't have any questions.
Okay.
Can we just put nobody's questions today?
Maybe.
I don't think.
I thought a lot of this was really like straightforward.
Yeah, it was like straightforward.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put nobody's questions.
Yeah. So I was just thinking time-wise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alright.
Maybe like
Yeah, we done.
then again I feel like maybe you can answer this question.
Sure.
Like how I don't know, like so whenever you're a teacher, is it like I don't know what I'm trying to say, but like okay, so that you say that people teach off of the Common Core is based on what the test is, right? So do the test and the Common Core people, are they together? And like
Yes, but I don't know exactly how that all works. But yeah, there's like a couple testing companies that have
Okay.
developed Common Core tests.
okay.
So I don't know if they like work together, but whoever writes the tests bases all of it off of the Common Core.
So say, 'cause if someone's making the test and somebody else is making the Common Core, is how are you ever supposed
Yeah.
to?
Which I think that's kind of how it is.
Yeah.
Like there's
Would,
somebody.
yeah, because Common Core is like, isn't it Common Core like government?
Yeah.
So
So
if
it's
there's
whether
government
they-
and then
what's
yeah.
state,
State
whatever, yeah,
It
government,
has
and
their
then
own way of testing it.
tests are sure they're like government mandated, but they're written by a
Yeah.
corporate company looking to make money.
Well, that's just it. And so like
Well, then, oh, go
I feel like teachers and the people who actually know what their children should know to like go on to the next class, but they have no part
Yeah.
in making any of this.
No, government was just too lazy to make the standardized test, so they just like gave it to somebody else to do, and now all these other people are making it shit and money off of
And
it.
when they
Like,
wrote the
that's what's
Common
happening.
Core, it wasn't like they got together a whole bunch of teachers and said,
No.
what do you people think who teach these children every day, what do you think kids should learn? Like, no, the teachers didn't have any say in what the Common
Just like
Core,
I'm sitting in my office and I
was.
feel like this is what children should know.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
if each
Yeah.
state makes
That
their
one.
own test, then how are we supposed to like compare? Like I feel like that makes like cross-state comparison like totally like biased.
Yeah.
Well, we just
You know,
kind of like reversed the problem, like everybody had their own standards, and so then they had their own tests, and then it wasn't aligned, but now everyone has their own standards, but everyone has a different
different
test, so you
test.
still
Yeah.
can't
You
compare.
still, yeah, that's what I was saying.
states.
Like if everyone has a different test, like
But
I
yet
don't know,
you
like,
still see on the news where they're like, oh, you know, the best grades or whatever were in
In here.
here and here and here, and it's like, yeah, but everyone's taking different tests.
Yeah, so
like,
you don't know.
so how can you really judge those kids?
Yeah, and I don't really know how, so ours is like the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium is the Washington one. And I don't know how, I know, the SBAC, yeah, SBAC is what we call it now. I don't know how, if there's other states that have that same one, so maybe they cover a couple different states, I don't know.
Well, then how do you decide what states you cover?
Yeah.
I don't know, and the state gives you
Government
money to do this
compliance.
test, I don't know, that politics of it all, I don't really know.
Well, and then you have them taking all these different tests. You know, every state is taking a different test, and then you all have to take the SAT together.
Yeah.
You all
Yeah,
have to
so
take the
then
AP
you-
test
yeah.
together.
Yeah.
Just-
Well, and like this year, there was a part of the SBAC was a 10th grade test. They didn't need it to graduate. They didn't need it at all. And they said, we don't care, you still have to take it. So,
You don't have to pass any of them ever.
no, not anymore to
Yeah,
graduate.
so you never have to pass any
No.
of them.
So like thousands
Since the
of
Wausau
kids.
went away, you've never had to pass any of them.
Mhm.
They're not required.
You have a
What's the
senior
point?
project
Yeah,
sometimes,
what's-
and
yeah,
that's like
that's
your
what we
one
had.
thing that you have to do. So,
Government.
what's the point was
Yeah.
exactly what all these
Well,
people thought,
I mean,
and thousands of
in
kids
Snohomish
opted
last
out.
year, there was like 90% of the kids opted out of
Yeah.
the tests.
Oh,
I
I
thought-
thought it passed test to graduate.
Nope, you they didn't, that's what they told you. I 100%
Yeah, I
guarantee
don't
you
know
did
when
not
that
have to.
changed, but you don't
Because
have to
they
my
just
now.
told you that.
my little brother graduated in 2013 and he didn't have to pass any of them.
Maybe it was like our district.
It might have
because
been.
like my district, like unless
Well, our district said you had to too, but you didn't have to.
Some
Well, because
districts
but
the
do
district
that.
can't decide, right? I
The
mean, if
district
it's
can't
Not
decide.
really, not
Yeah.
legally,
No.
they can't really decide, but
So
they
you
can
didn't
still
have to
say
pass
that,
it.
that
They can say anything they want, but they can't enforce it.
Because then the
So you
district,
didn't have to pass any of
that's their
them.
motivation, right? Because they're like, well,
Yeah.
this district, all of us
But
have to
if-
test
but
and
if
they're
none of-
opting out.
If none of the students take the test, where you're not getting the funding.
yeah, so then, after
So
all
they
those
tell you
kids
you have
opted
to
out,
take it.
and the
so that they'll get
legislator had to go in and do their special sessions for months on end, like they
Yeah.
always do. Guess what, they got rid of the 10th grade test, cause it was pointless, they were
Yeah.
spending all this money
Yeah.
giving this test that nobody even was taking because they didn't need it. So now they don't require it in 10th grade.
Yeah, when I was in 10th grade, it was like you had reading, writing, and math, and you had to pass them all. And then science was optional, so nobody took it.
Right.
And then after
Why would
I
you
was,
take it?
and then the year after me, I'm gonna say they only had to pass math, and then after that, they didn't have to pass any of them.
Yeah, our,
Like you could just opt out of all of them.
Wow.
yeah, our
yeah.
school district never made any test optional.
Yeah, our tests were
Same.
never optional. You always had to.
Like,
take
I'm
it.
sure
You
they
don't
think
know that they
yeah.
were, but they
Oh, I
were.
Yeah,
guess
because this district's never gonna tell you that it's
No.
optional, but even
Because
at
it
the
screws them
elementary
over.
level,
Which,
Yeah.
my husband had a student opt
The
out
only reason I
last
knew it was
year,
because my
that's
dad was
that, in 4th grade.
a teacher.
well, yeah, no doubt, because why does this kid want to take this test,
If
have it on their
it's-
record
yeah.
that they failed it when they weren't properly prepared
And
for it?
nothing, like there's nothing happens to
What
them.
yeah.
Nothing, like that's what I always tell my kids, they're always gonna get so nervous, it's
Yeah.
like, but what's going to happen to you? And they literally think like, I won't pass 4th grade.
Oh, yeah.
Nope, that's not gonna happen, you
Yeah.
know, like,
It puts more pressure on them and makes them freak out.
It's, well, yeah, because it's like, I mean, the
I don't
ELLs
even
especially
see the
take,
scores till
Yeah.
you're in 5th grade, is what I tell them.
especially the
Yeah, it
ELLs
doesn't
who
even
take this
matter.
test when they're coming in that determines where they're going, and they're like,
Yeah.
well, here's another test, and you're like, you're telling me you're not going to kick me somewhere else because I'm going to fail this?
Yeah, yeah, it's
That's
crazy.
annoying.
No, the testing is annoying. And luckily, I mean,
There's-
Bellingham is like this little haven where we don't have to worry about it, but that's not the case
Yeah.
everywhere.
Well, I feel like it's getting moved towards where it should be, because it used to be it was required and it was determining it was like tracking students and determining funding, and now like if you're just giving the option like to take it, it's more being used as a method of assessment for schools to see like where you're at. Like if it's an optional thing, it's not necessarily being like this huge pressure thing,
Yeah.
like you have to
Like
pass
you
these
need
to
to
move on to the next grade. It's more of like an assessment tool to see like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, where is this school at?
Yeah.
Like how I feel like I don't know if that's how it's working, but like I feel like this is an opportunity that it could be used more as a tool to like help schools rather
Yeah.
than like punish them for doing bad on tests.
My thing is,
like
how
even if
is
it's optional.
sitting down students and making them take, I mean, I don't know how many days it takes to take
Yeah.
these tests these days, but how is that, you're all worried about money, but yet you're going to set aside these kids to take all these tests? That's what I don't
They're
understand.
losing learning time too.
Yeah, that's
Like,
what I said.
Mhm.
Takes her.
Well, and it is, so like Dr. Baker has, I think he's trying to send a message by doing what he's doing, but really, like our whole district, I think next year, our whole district is gonna be failing. Because right now, most of the elementaries are failing, and so so last year was the first year that this happened. And then if you're a failing school, your parents can opt to take you to a different school. And they provide transportation for 1 year, and then you can stay there if your parent can provide their own transportation. And then this year, it was more schools that were failing, and Silver Beach isn't failing, so we're one of those schools that people can come to. And nobody's really, we've had 2 students in the last 2 years that have done this, where one came from Roosevelt and one came from Carl Kocher, because those 2 schools were failing. And Dr. Baker just kind of says, we're not gonna like work to try to get these schools not failing, like this is just what we're gonna do, we're just gonna keep providing good instruction and,
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens in the next couple of years,
Yeah.
but, and I don't know, how long that will go on before the state changes
because
what they're
technically
doing,
if
or,
schools are failing for a certain number of years, they have to close.
yeah,
There's government intervention to
Yeah.
completely give you like a scripted curriculum, or your school gets closed.
yeah.
But if it's
Like,
all
what would
schools
happen-
in Bellingham,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So like, what happens?
Well, right,
They would
and
do they would just do scripted curriculum.
Yeah, but then the other part of it is our state is in hot water because they haven't been funding basic education. So that's kind of the like, you're not funding basic education, so we can't provide basic education. And they have gotten sued.
What do you
know,
mean
and-
by basic education? Sorry.
Like, I don't really know what it means, but it has
Okay.
to do with, our class sizes. It's like all those rankings, the class size ranking and the, what is it, the other one, the teacher salary ranking, we're like at the bottom in both of them. So we're finally getting paid a little bit more, but we don't get paid hardly anything compared to other states, and our class size is like at the bottom.
Idaho's even worse though.
Yeah,
Idaho
we're
gets
not at the
paid
bottom,
less.
there's a couple states that are worse than us.
I can't even believe, but Idaho gets paid like
But-
nothing.
Doesn't cost
Yeah.
But Washington has
Yeah.
a lot of money. Like we should
Yeah.
not be at the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
No, I mean, they wanted to give themselves an 11% raise.
Yeah.
Oh my
And-
God.
And we have not got a cost of living adjustment in 7 years. And the voters voted for that. The
Yeah,
voters
that's-
voted
wow.
in a cost of living adjustment, which I've never gotten it.
Because like both my parents are teachers and like it's like crazy like
Mhm.
they're like okay like you're not even like giving us what people like vote for us to have.
Well, and people like your parents who've been teaching a long time, some of people are making less money now than they did 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Their paychecks are less.
So crazy. And so
It's nuts, and the insurance rates go up and too, so
Yeah.
it's weird, it's crazy. Washington's kinda, like there's really good things and then there's other, like the legislators and the government in Olympia when it comes to education is like,
Yeah.
and like
There's a
people
few
like
people in Olympia who work really hard and are really good. But
there are,
yeah.
yes, there are lots of supporters of teachers, but
Yeah.
there's
My
also.
dad knows a lot, so I know quite a few of the people who work in Olympia. And there are quite a few good people, but there are
Well,
also
what
a lot of
happens is
really
they've
crappy
got
people.
heads,
Yeah.
so then no decisions ever get made, it's the same thing that happens in Washington DC.
I'm
They
friends
just
with
fight.
Constantine on Facebook if you guys have
Which is funny because being from
I
Olympia,
think also my phone.
like our schools are incredibly AP test. Like I mean, it's like our schools are beyond like you just have to succeed at everything. Like you
Yeah.
cannot fail. Like that's not an option. Like I mean, I took 4 or 5 AP tests over my high school career, and they're like, "But you don't want to take AP Spanish?" I'm like,
Oh
you know
my
what?
gosh.
No, I really don't. And so it's like we had
That's interesting.
which I hated. Ours was the first year to do this, and I did last year too. So normally you get like, what is it, like 3.0 or above, you get like the honor cords.
Uh-huh.
Well, now they have gold, silver, and bronze.
What?
I'm like, and my friend was like, there's no way in hell I'm wearing bronze. Like, I don't want to
So
go
it's
there
like
with
a
a brown
third
cord.
honors type
Yeah,
of
and it's
person
like, you
who-
still, and a bronze was 3.5. Like, I get a silver. And I was like, I don't want to wear
What?
silver when someone else has gold. Like, that's stupid.
What?
And so it was really sad because like our class
Yeah.
like pretty much like there was 4 or 5 people that wore cords, and it was like when really almost all of us had
Yeah.
honors.
Yeah.
It's super annoying.
Yeah, ours was like, I don't know, high honors and highest honors. So like if you're like high honors, you got 1 cord, and if you're
Same.
highest, you got 2 cords.
I'm just gonna steal someone else's and be like, that's right.
Yeah.
Go to Joanne
I wear my
Fabric
2
and
silver
make your
ones.
own. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I mean, it's like valedictorian. So I got good grades. They got 0.1 better, and they get a medal to wear. Like, I mean, it's the same thing, right? Like, I've got better grades. Like, it's like a sports game. I won the sports game. I think that's what's
Yeah.
wrong with our. I just think there's a lot of things wrong with not rewarding people for.
Yeah, the competition
Yeah.
part of it is
Yeah.
not like
Oh yeah.
ranking.
I completely agree. Like, you know, I did work really hard for my grades. My thing was, why can't we all just have the cord?
Yeah.
You know, why does it have to now be 3
It's a
different?
competition within the competition.
Well, yeah. And
Yeah.
it's just, and well then, my thing is, it's like, being able to look at someone and know exactly what their GPA was. Like, I'm like, I don't want you guys to know. Like, you know, I was really proud of my GPA, but I don't want them to be like, oh, they're silver, we know what her GPA was.
Yeah.
Oh, you know who that is. And it's like,
That's not the color thing, isn't fair.
exactly. Like,
Not
I agree,
the-
like, the
yeah.
cords, if you didn't deserve it, like, oh no, go away.
But the colors.
Yeah.
Yeah, the colors within that is
Yeah.